Thank you so much, Kira. That was a really, really wonderful reading. And it is now my pleasure to introduce Jeanette Winterson. There is nothing so wonderful in the world as telling stories, Virginia Woolf wrote. And Jeanette Winterson is a storyteller. That's a good place to start, I think. Her first novel, Oranges Are Not the Only Fruit, was published in 1985, and from that moment, the light of her artistry blazed out into the world. The Passion, Sexing the Cherry, The Power Book, Lighthouse Keeping, The Stone Gods, The Daylight Gate, Frankenstein, each one of her books, there are too many to list, and of course they include her extraordinary memoir, Why Be Happy When You Could Be Normal. Each of her books is an expression of her true being, imagination and language woven together to create works of unique and vibrant beauty. Jeanette is an evangelist for art, a woman who knows that art is not optional. She has always known that in our darkest moments, it is art that supports us, that teaches us, that helps us to live with and understand our fellow human beings. And she has lived as boldly as she has written, carving space for herself and showing her readers how they might do the same. She has been made a commander of the Order of the British Empire. She has a new book, 12 Bites, a nuanced examination of humanity and artificial intelligence. She is just as electric a speaker as she is a writer, as you are shortly to discover if you do not know already. Her relationship to and with Virginia Woolf, the focus of our literary rendezvous, goes back a great many years. Woolf is a writer she and I have talked about often, a writer who has much to say to us now in the 21st century. I can't wait to hear Jeanette's thoughts, and so without further ado, I cede the floor to her.
Thank you, Erica. Oh, my friends, imagine it's 1888 and Virginia Woolf is born. Queen Victoria is on the throne. The clothes that women are wearing are really not designed to do anything except sit down and take tea and flatter great men. Now, Virginia Woolf's father, Sir Leslie Stephen, was a great man. He was the compiler, the editor, the driving force behind a terrible piece of work, if you were Virginia Woolf, which was entirely filled with great men. So the ones who weren't coming to tea were in the dictionary. And this was Virginia Woolf's early life. And it's no wonder that she said later on, after her father died, that had he lived, she wrote in her diary, "My father's life would entirely have ended mine." And Virginia Woolf, brought up in Hyde Park Gate, plenty of money, plenty of status, but neither of her parents believed in education for women, neither of them. So while her brother was sent to school and then on to Cambridge, which was the natural route, Virginia and her sister Vanessa, later Vanessa Bell, the painter whose work I'm sure you know, his house you visited at Charleston. No, Virginia and Vanessa were schooled at home by their mother. Now, their mother did offer them a wide education. She taught them Latin, she taught them French, she taught them history, and there are many photographs of them in the schoolroom behind the dining room. Assiduous at their lessons. And of course, they had the run of their father's library, because whatever else he was a man who loved words, who loved books, and who believed in the power of language to change, to influence, but also to control. But he gave his two daughters the run of the library. He put no conditions on it, which Virginia Woolf always said was quite astonishing, given how many conditions were put on women's lives, particularly at that time. And as someone myself whose early beginnings were entirely centred on the library, in my case a public library, because we only had 6 books at home in our house, I know how important that is, to be able to run free among books, because there is the life of the mind. There you may encounter many talents, many spirits, opinions far different from your own, life experiences far different from your own. And in this vast sea of language, these continents of possibility, what might you not find? What might you not discover? And so Virginia Woolf, although deprived of what she later thought was so crucial for women, a formal education, had the run of the house in a very particular way, the run of the house of the mind, and she made the most of it. Now, her mother died when she was 13. This was the beginning of her mental instability. It was very hard for her after that. Her mother gender roles were very specific then. So while her father was the stern, distant patriarch, the man of letters, her mother was not only their teacher, she certainly wasn't their friend, because that didn't happen in Victorian households, but she was the compassionate, consoling person. And the loss of her was felt very greatly by the developing sensitive woman, then called Virginia Stephen, who would in 1912 marry Leonard Woolf. And theirs was a long and happy and sustained marriage, not one that depended on the modern conventions of romance, but was in fact an absolute partnership, which was no doubt important for her mental stability and for her creative life. Now, the piece you just heard Kira read, 1931, just remember that that is 90 years ago. And how did it sound today? Did we not all recognise those things that we were hearing? Did it sound like something that was written 90 years ago? No, not at all. Not only because those problems are still prescient, are still with us, are still things that all of us, men and women alike, need to grapple with, but because her mind was so ahead of itself, it was so fresh. And she saw the world as a whole, as a round. She didn't sectionalise things. So when she was talking about the position of women, we understood that she was really talking about the distortion in humanity, that really, as she says, in other parts of the piece, why should one sex be so prosperous and so secure? And why should the other sex be so poor and so dependent? That is a very good question to ask. And she was asking it from her own experience, thinking, my brother went to Cambridge. She did not feel herself the lack of any education in the obvious sense. What she felt the lack of was that conviviality, that congregation, that conversation that you get when you meet as like minds in a similar place, which is what men have always enjoyed, whether it's been in the private clubs or the universities, or indeed now in the boardrooms, in all the spaces that men still occupy, where they can talk to each other as equals without fear, without having to put on a show or a performance. And for many women, of course, putting on a show or a performance is really what they also put on as soon as they finish dressing and doing their makeup. Then it's time to go outside and put on the show and the performance, because they cannot feel that they can simply be themselves, because in whatever situation that won't be acceptable. Virginia Woolf understood this, and she watched her brother and her brother's friends from Cambridge, the Bloomsbury set that grew up around her, of which she was an integral part, enjoying that ease. And she was very interested in ease. You know, it's that sense of leisure that we heard in the piece, that you would need to have just a little bit of time, a little bit of space. It's not just the very famous book that she wrote in 1929, A Room of One's Own. Of course you need a room. Of course you need some money in order to do anything. You need to be able to shut the door. You need to be able to not worry about the bills being paid. Of course you do. But you also need that sense of community and conversation. That's where ideas begin to spark off one to another. That's where the mind begins to thrive. You know, great ideas, people who have great ideas don't just sit around saying, hey, we're having great ideas. You know, they say, oh, the fish is good tonight. What's the wine? How's the weather? Where have you been? Things begin to ease in. And out of that comes all sorts of possibilities, some spark. Women, she said, were cut off from that. They were simply set aside. You know, the convention when she was a young woman, that after dinner the men would go into one room and talk about important things, and the women would be set aside, not with port and brandy and cigars, but with cups of tea. I think, what can you really think about with a cup of tea after dinner? I mean, perhaps some of you do have great ideas with a cup of tea after dinner. I personally do not. And so Virginia Woolf was really championing those open spaces she'd found in her father's library. She knew that the life of the mind, the imaginative life that she talked about, is a wide open space. And that's what she wanted for women. She did not want women to be enclosed or constricted. So she had problems with the trappings of being a woman, which many women did. She did not have any problems with the sense of the life of the mind or where it needed to go in order to do its best, in order not to be constrained. Professions for Women, 1931, so 90 years ago. Before that, she'd gone up to Cambridge and delivered the lecture that became A Room of One's Own, 1929. She delivered it in two parts, at Newnham and at Girton, the new women's colleges. Finally, women were allowed to go to Cambridge, study for a degree, though they were not awarded degrees at Cambridge till 1948. Just get your heads around that, boys and girls. 1948, Cambridge did not think that it was fit to give degrees to women, even though they could study at these two colleges. And these were rather desperate colleges. Some of you will have been to Cambridge, some of you will have known Newnham and Girton. They smelled of lino and cabbage. And the men's colleges were all good wine, good food, claret, opulence, relaxation, pleasure, room for the life of the mind. The women were told they must study hard, work hard. They didn't have time to buy nice clothes. They certainly didn't have time to buy wine. They must only concentrate on what they had. So when Virginia Woolf accepted that invitation to talk about A Room of One's Own, the lectures that became A Room of One's Own, where she said, listen, writing is practical. The things that we do, creativity is a practical thing. There's nothing that is airy-fairy about creativity. You need space to do it, you need money to do it, you need time to do it. She was such a practical person, and this is not the image often that we have of her. Absolutely practical. Let's get this stuff published. Let's control the means of production, just like Marx said we should. Let's not sit here waiting for other people to tell us what we can say and how we can say it and whether they'll publish or not. Let's do it. Highly practical woman, looking always for the situations for women where they could become women in their full right, in their full capacity. The angel in the house, only one of them. And very often it's from other women that we internalise the toxicity of oppression, whether it's from our mothers, where it can be anything, how you should behave, how you should look, what you should do, who you should be. And so what we should think about when we think about Virginia Woolf, her consequences, her legacy, is really she's many things. She's a lighthouse. She's warning us of where the rocks are. She's also showing us where the light is and reminding us that often the things that we have internalized from out there, whether it's the patriarchy or not, many women are in the surface of the patriarchy. It is often from other women that we get our severest criticism. And we're here today, and what I would like to end on, really, with my thoughts about Virginia Woolf, is that we are here to support one another, to make possibilities for one another, to open the space as she opened the space. Whatever chance, whatever opportunity you get, for young women to go out there and open the space, clear the road, use your privilege, use your power. There's nothing wrong with privilege and power as long as you use it in the service of good. And that's what Virginia Woolf was saying. She had £500 a year. She had a room of her own. She knew that she was better off than most women, but she didn't sit with it. She used it. She was practical. She was active. She was an activist. She was Virginia Woolf. Thank you.